A woman was days away from marrying the millionaire fiancé of her dreams until her own sister stole him right out from under her. But 6 years later, at their mother's funeral, she returned not as the broken ex, but with a life so powerful, it left her betrayers speechless. What do you do when the people who ruined your world suddenly want back in? Is forgiveness possible when trust has been shattered? And what happens when karma shows up, dressed in elegance and peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love true life stories that feel like movies, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. 6 years ago, my sister stole the man I was going to marry. Now, at our mother's funeral, she walked in wearing my old engagement ring, holding his hand, and offered a smile that felt more like a blade. "Still single at 38?" she whispered, soft enough for only me to hear. Her tone was gentle, but everything behind it screamed cruelty. What she didn't know, as her diamond flashed under the chapel lights, was that I had come to this funeral with a secret of my own, one that would wipe that smug smile off her face before the day was over. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning had started quiet, gray and heavy. My father hadn't touched his breakfast. I helped him into his suit, the same navy one he wore to every big family moment, but today his shoulders hung lower, his steps slower. Since my mother passed, he barely spoke above a whisper. I stayed with him in our childhood home the whole week, making arrangements, calling relatives, planning the service down to the hymns she loved. But despite the grief, I was bracing for something else entirely. A different kind of pain. The kind you prepare for but never really get used to. Because today, I knew I would see Stephanie again. The last time I'd seen her was the day I caught her in my fiancé's arms. The day she looked me in the eyes and said, "It just happened." The day everything, my wedding, my future, my family, broke like glass at my feet. Since then, we hadn't spoken, not once. She never apologized. I never reached out. And yet here we were. At the funeral home, people I hadn't seen in years offered polite hugs and condolences. Great aunts dabbed at their eyes. Old neighbors brought casseroles. But my eyes were locked on the door, waiting. And then it opened. She walked in like nothing had ever happened. Stephanie, flawless, confident, composed, in a sleek black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. On her arm was Nathan. Yes, that Nathan, my ex-fiancé, the man who once promised to grow old with me. He looked thinner than I remembered. Older, maybe. Or maybe just emptier. But still rich. Still polished, still hers. Stephanie's eyes scanned the room like she was the hostess of a charity gala, not our mother's funeral. And then she spotted me. She walked straight up, that familiar smirk playing on her lips. "Rebecca," she said, pulling me into a stiff hug. Her perfume was too strong, her voice syrupy sweet. "It's been a long time," I replied, holding my composure. She tilted her head, glanced at my bare ring finger. "Still single at 38?" she said, and patted me like a sad little puppy. I smiled, not because I was happy to see her, but because I knew something she didn't. I turned toward the side of the room and called softly, "Zachary." My husband, tall, poised, effortlessly elegant in a dark suit, stepped forward. His presence quieted the room. The moment Nathan saw him, his entire face drained of color. Stephanie's hand twitched where it rested on her designer purse. "Zachary Foster?" she asked, almost choking on the last name. "The one and only," he said with a smile, extending his hand politely. And just like that, the entire dynamic shifted. They had no idea what was coming. But today wasn't just about saying goodbye to Mom. It was about reclaiming everything I lost and showing the world exactly how far I'd come. 2 years before everything fell apart, my life looked perfect, at least on paper. I was 32, living in a modern apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, working as a senior marketing manager for a lifestyle brand that was finally getting national attention. I had friends, freedom, and a mother who called me her shining star. The only thing missing? A partner who felt like home. Then came Nathan Reynolds. I met him at a charity gala hosted by a mutual friend, Allison, my college roommate. He had that effortless confidence that made people lean in when he spoke. His smile was practiced but warm, and his handshake lingered just enough to make me curious. Within 5 minutes, he had me laughing over his terrible pronunciation of French wines and telling him about my childhood dog. By the end of the night, we were trading numbers like it was inevitable. Nathan was a self-made tech entrepreneur. By 36, he'd already sold 2 companies, was featured in Forbes 40 Under 40, and had a condo that screamed success. But what drew me wasn't the money. It was how he listened. Or at least how I thought he did. He remembered my coffee order, took me to see art exhibits I mentioned in passing. He sent flowers just because, and left notes in my briefcase that said things like, "Kill that pitch today. You're unstoppable." It didn't take long for our lives to intertwine. Weekend getaways to Martha's Vineyard, box seats at the symphony, dinners at restaurants with names I couldn't pronounce but quickly learned to love. My mom adored him, said he had good hands and better manners. And when he proposed after 18 months, on a yacht, under fireworks, with a 5-carat ring, I said yes before he could finish the question. It was a fairy tale, down to the applause from the servers and champagne chilled just right. I asked Stephanie to be my maid of honor. It felt like the grown-up thing to do. We weren't close, not since college, really. She had always been competitive. Even as kids, if I won a spelling bee, she had to win the science fair. If I brought home straight A's, she'd cry until she was enrolled in the same classes. But we were adults now. Surely we'd outgrown that. When she met Nathan at a family dinner, I caught the way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes, how she touched his arm just a second too long, but I chalked it up to her usual charm. Stephanie was always the center of attention. She didn't know how to be anything else. At our engagement party, held in my parents' backyard under fairy lights, she floated around like she owned the night. Still, she made a lovely toast. She called me the heart of the family, and Nathan the brother she never had. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. Later that night, Mom pulled me aside while stacking empty champagne flutes. She said, "Be careful with your sister. She's drawn to things that shine, and Nathan shines." I rolled my eyes. "We're not kids anymore, Mom." But somewhere deep in my stomach, a knot began to form. A quiet warning I refused to listen to, because happy endings didn't have room for doubt. I had the ring, I had the man, I had the plan. What I didn't know was that I also had a storm quietly brewing in the shadow of my perfect little life. At first, it was little things. Nathan used to text me good morning before I'd even poured my coffee. Then it became lunchtime check-ins. Then silence until I got home. He said he was swamped with investor meetings. I believed him. Friday nights were always ours. Thai takeout and whatever crime documentary we were binging that month. But suddenly, his calendar was full. Strategic dinners, early product demos, last-minute calls with overseas teams. He started saying he'd make it up to me, but those makeups rarely came. One night, I set the table for 2 anyway, ordered his favorite pad ki mao, lit candles, waited. By 10, I was scraping noodles into the trash. When he finally came through the door, suit rumpled and voice tight, he kissed my forehead like I was a child, not his fiancé. "You didn't have to wait up." "I wasn't waiting," I lied. He smiled like he didn't believe me, then walked past me into the bedroom. It kept happening. He stopped noticing the small things. The haircut I got, the dress he used to love. Now he said it washed me out. My laugh in public embarrassed him. He asked if I could keep the light off at night while I read. Too bright, he said. He used to say it made him fall asleep. One afternoon, I came home early to surprise him. His jacket was tossed on the back of the couch. I hung it up for him because I still did that kind of thing. As I pulled the collar straight, I caught a scent. Floral. Heavy. Not mine. I stood there for a moment, just breathing it in. That night, I asked, casually, trying not to sound like an interrogator. He said he hugged a potential investor, Rebecca Mills. She wore too much perfume, he said, waving it off. You know how some people bathe in it. He kissed my temple. I nodded. The next day, I had lunch with Allison. You're just stressed, she said, sipping her latte. Every bride thinks something's wrong before the wedding. I cried over flower colors for 2 days straight. I wanted to believe her. Stephanie called that night. You mind if I take your place at the cake tasting with Mom? She asked. Nathan said he's swamped and it's on the way home from my gym. I hesitated. You sure you know what flavors he likes? She laughed. Please, I've heard him rave about hazelnut mousse for months, and I know you hate lemon. You're safe with me. I stared at my reflection in the microwave door for a long time after we hung up. The next morning, I vacuumed Nathan's car before a dinner party. That's when I saw it. A silver earring tucked between the seat and the console. A small sapphire dangling from it. Rebecca's. She wore those at our engagement party. Grandma's gift. I held it in my palm like it burned. That night, I showed it to him. He didn't flinch. Oh, yeah, he said, almost too smoothly. I gave her a ride to the florist. Her car was in the shop. She mentioned losing it. I called Stephanie. Her voice was bright. Oh my God, you found it? I thought it was gone for good. Nathan was sweet enough to drive me, remember? That was the week my brakes went out. The words matched. Too perfectly. Like they'd rehearsed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, at the ring on my hand. I got up, walked into the bathroom, and stared at myself. And for the first time, I didn't recognize the woman looking back. The next week, Nathan missed our final meeting with the wedding photographer. Said his flight from New York got delayed. His voice on the phone was flat. No apology. Just instructions. Let Stephanie handle it. I sat alone at the cafe for 45 minutes, stirring coffee I didn't drink. My phone buzzed. Stephanie sent me a photo of a sample album. Thoughts? No caption. No emoji. Just that. Later that night, he came home late again. I asked him if we were okay. He kissed my forehead. You're just tired, he said. I nodded. 3 days later, I packed his favorite sandwich from the deli across my office. Turkey, provolone, no mayo. I wrote his name on the brown paper bag like the girl I used to be. When I walked into his building, the security guard smiled. Rebecca, right? Going up, he's in. His secretary, Margot, looked up, startled. She half stood. He's in a meeting right now. That's fine. I brought lunch. I can wait. Her eyes flicked toward his office door. Actually, he asked not to be disturbed today. I stepped past her. Rebecca, maybe I should... I pushed the door open. I didn't say anything. Didn't scream. Didn't cry. Stephanie was on his lap. Her arms looped around his neck. His hands were on her waist. Her blouse was wrinkled. His tie was loose. They weren't talking. They didn't hear me walk in. When the door clicked shut behind me, Stephanie turned first. She froze. Nathan stood, slow and stiff, like someone waking up in the wrong place. This isn't what it looks like. Stephanie didn't bother. We didn't mean for it to happen. Don't call me that. She blinked. Becca, don't call me that. I took off the ring, slid it onto the desk. Nathan watched it land with a quiet tap. That diamond used to sparkle. Now it looked cheap. You two deserve each other. I walked out. In the elevator, my hands shook. By the time I reached the street, my legs barely worked. I don't remember driving home, only that when I got there, I dropped to the bathroom floor and curled up next to the tub. I called my mom. Couldn't get the words out. She said she was coming, no questions, just that. They used the spare key. My dad didn't say much, just paced the room, jaw clenched. My mom sat beside me, held my hand while I cried until there was nothing left. That night, I threw the save the dates in the trash, one by one. They'd been sitting on the counter, 75 envelopes, each one stamped, labeled, all ready to tell the world about a future that no longer existed. The apartment felt too quiet after they left. My mother had changed the sheets, left food in the fridge, and kissed my forehead before going home. My father just said, "Let us know what you need." I didn't answer. I didn't even lock the door behind them. I crawled into bed wearing the same clothes I'd cried in, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the next room like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the world. I didn't go to work the next day, or the day after. My phone filled with messages. Allison, my boss, the florist, the planner, asking about cake confirmations, guest counts, deposit refunds. I ignored them all. I spent hours sitting on the floor, staring at the half-packed boxes of wedding decor my mom had helped me sort through the week before. Ivory ribbons, calligraphy place cards, little jars of honey with "meant to be" printed on the label. I threw the box against the wall. It didn't break, nothing shattered. It just sat there, mocking me. I stopped answering calls. I stopped opening curtains. My mother started leaving voicemails, her voice quieter each time. "Honey, call me. Just let me know you're okay. Please." Then silence. After a week, she showed up again. She didn't ask. She just came in, made tea, sat beside me on the couch, and said, "Let's start with today." I nodded but didn't speak. For days, she fed me soup I didn't taste and changed my bedsheets when I wouldn't move. When I lost 15 pounds in a month, she booked me a therapist. The therapist's office smelled like lemon and linen. She had a soft voice and a bookshelf full of grief literature I refused to touch. I sat across from her in silence for 3 sessions before I finally said, "My sister took my fiancé, and I watched her do it in slow motion." She didn't look surprised, just nodded and said, "That sounds like an unbearable betrayal." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the word betrayal felt so clinical, like what they did to me could fit neatly into a DSM category, like it didn't split me in half. I kept going, though, every Tuesday, then Fridays, then twice a week when the nightmares started. My boss, after learning what happened, suggested I take a leave of absence. She said my creativity had dulled, and she wasn't wrong. I forgot a pitch mid-sentence in front of a major client. My hands shook when I typed emails. I once burst into tears in the office bathroom because someone used my coffee mug. It wasn't about the mug. I knew that. One night, I sat in the bath fully clothed, not to harm myself, just to feel something different, something other than the thick fog of shame and failure. When the water turned cold, I stood up, changed into dry clothes, and stared at my reflection. My face looked hollow, my eyes too big, my skin sallow. I didn't look like someone who'd been left. I looked like someone who didn't know who she was anymore. That was the scariest part. Then an email popped up from corporate. A marketing director role had opened up in our Chicago office. It was a lateral move, but in a different city. A clean slate. No history, no memories waiting around corners. I stared at it for 3 hours before applying. 2 weeks later, the offer came through. I called my mother from my closet, packing sweaters into a suitcase. She cried, asked if I'd ever forgive Stephanie. I didn't answer. She said, "Forgiveness isn't for her, sweetheart. It's for you." I said goodbye anyway. I left Boston on a Wednesday morning, one suitcase, one carry-on, one promise to myself. This city won't see me break again. Chicago greeted me with wind that cut through my coat and silence that echoed in every hallway of the studio apartment I rented near the river. It was small, barely furnished, but it was mine. No photos on the walls, no ghosts in the closets. Just beige paint, cheap blinds, and the faint sound of traffic below my window at night. I unpacked everything in one day, not because I was excited, because I couldn't stand the sight of unopened boxes anymore. The office was sleek, all glass and exposed brick, full of people who didn't know my name or my history. That anonymity was a gift. I smiled when someone introduced themselves, shook hands with purpose, and lied through my teeth when they asked what brought me to the city. Career opportunity, I said, needed a change of pace. No one pushed further. That's the thing about big cities. No one cares why you ran, just that you showed up. I poured myself into work. I stayed late, volunteered for extra projects, answered emails at midnight. Productivity became my refuge. As long as my calendar was full, I didn't have to think. I skipped lunch with coworkers. I turned down happy hours. I took long walks by the river instead. Headphones in, playlists full of songs with lyrics I didn't want to hear. One Tuesday, HR hosted a wellness mixer. I almost skipped it. I hovered by the door for 10 minutes before walking in, grabbing a soda, and retreating to the edge of the room. That's when I met Madison, Director of People Operations. She complimented my shoes, asked if I was the Rebecca from the Portland brand relaunch, then pulled me into a conversation about books before I could retreat. I liked her instantly. She had a loud laugh and zero patience for office politics. 2 weeks later, she invited me to her book club. I said no the first time, said maybe the second, showed up the third, brought wine, and sat in the corner until someone mentioned true crime podcasts. I couldn't help myself. I joined in. And for a moment, I sounded like myself again. Madison tried to set me up twice. Both times, I declined. The idea of dating felt absurd. I wasn't ready to hand anyone the fragile pieces I was still trying to glue back together. I needed quiet, routine, control. Not butterflies or first dates or small talk. Then came the San Francisco conference. I was sent to represent our team at a tech and media summit. It was my first work trip since Boston. The panels were crowded, the networking awkward, the food overpriced. On the second night, I attended a client dinner. That's where I met Zachary Foster, investor. Quiet, thoughtful. He asked smart questions, didn't interrupt, and didn't flirt. He just listened. We talked about digital storytelling over steak and wine I couldn't pronounce. When he asked for my card at the end of the night, I gave it to him without thinking twice. The next morning he emailed, said he enjoyed our conversation, asked if I wanted to grab coffee before the next keynote. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed yes. Just yes. We talked for an hour, then another, then it was time to go. When I got back to Chicago, I didn't expect to hear from him again. But he called. And that's where the next chapter really began. We started with emails, Nothing romantic, just two professionals exchanging articles, updates, the occasional sarcastic commentary on tech trends. Then came a call. Then lunch. Then more silence than I expected to enjoy. Zachary had a way of sitting with quiet that made it feel intentional, not awkward. He never filled space with noise, just let things breathe. Madison noticed first. Walked into my office one day, leaned against the doorframe and said, "So, you and the Venture King been sharing lunch breaks?" I smiled, shook my head, said it was just business. She raised an eyebrow. "Business doesn't make you look that light," she said, and walked out before I could argue. When Zachary asked me to dinner, I said yes, then panicked. I canceled, then rebooked, then almost canceled again. He met me outside a small Italian place in Lincoln Park. I wore a black dress I hadn't touched since Boston. My hands trembled when I picked up the menu. He didn't comment, just smiled and asked if I preferred red or white. We talked about books, cities we'd loved, why he hated cucumbers. And somewhere between the main course and dessert, I felt my chest tighten. My breathing shifted. The room spun. I clutched my water glass and tried to smile. "I think I'm having a panic attack." He didn't flinch, just moved his chair closer, lowered his voice, and said, "Breathe with me. In, out. No rush, no pressure, just air." He didn't touch me, didn't crowd me, just stayed, present, anchored. He drove me home that night, walked me to my door, hands in his pockets, no expectation. The next morning, flowers arrived at my office. No card, just a note. No pressure, no expectations, just hoping you're okay. Zach. I stared at that note for 10 minutes before I called him. I told him everything. Not in order, not clean, but real. About the wedding that never happened. About Stephanie, about Nathan, about the earring in the car and the kiss in the office and the way grief had hollowed me out like fire. He listened. Then he told me about his ex-wife, about the business partner she ran off with, the company he lost, the apartment he couldn't walk into for months. "I don't trust easy anymore," he said, "but I know what it feels like to rebuild from ash." He never pushed. He never asked for more than I could give. Our 5th date wasn't dinner. It was him cooking lasagna and in his apartment while I sat on the counter eating salad out of the bowl. He played jazz. I wore socks. It felt nothing like Nathan. That night, when I stood in his living room, looking at the art on his walls and the worn couch and the books with dog-eared pages, he asked if I wanted to stay. No pressure, no expectations. I stayed. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was choosing something. Not surviving, not compensating, choosing. And that changed everything. When my mother died, everything paused. Zachary held me as I cried on the kitchen floor the night I got the call. I hadn't seen my father cry in years, but when we landed in Boston and stepped into the quiet house where she used to hum while brewing coffee, he broke, quietly, like glass under pressure. We planned everything with care. She had wanted no frills, just white lilies, classical music, and a gathering of the people who knew her heart. I followed every wish, down to the silver-framed photo we placed beside her casket. She was smiling in it, still alive in that picture. The funeral home filled fast. Old friends, neighbors, colleagues from when she used to teach kindergarten. I shook hands, hugged people whose names I'd forgotten. Zachary stayed close, grounding me with small touches on my back, my shoulder, my hand. Then I heard it. the hush that follows a shift in temperature. I turned. Stephanie walked in, arm looped through Nathan's. She wore a black designer dress that clung like confidence. Her heels didn't make a sound, but her presence did. Nathan trailed beside her in a perfectly tailored suit, scanning the room like it belonged to him. I saw it before anyone else did, the ring on her finger, the one that used to be mine. They greeted people like celebrities, hugged relatives, kissed cheeks, said the right words. Then they made their way forward. I stayed still. Stephanie reached my father first. She hugged him. He accepted it stiffly. Then Nathan extended his hand. My father gave a nod, nothing more. And then Stephanie turned to me. "Rebecca," she said, smiling, "it's been a long time." "Yes," I replied. "That's all." She looked me over, not cruelly, just measuring. "You look well." I smiled, calm. "Have you met my husband?" Stephanie blinked. "You're—" Zachary stepped beside me then, his hand finding mine. "Nice to meet you," he said to her, his tone warm, polite, unreadable. Nathan stepped forward too. "Foster," he said, voice a little too loud, a little too forced. Zachary's eyes didn't flinch. "Reynolds." The air shifted. Stephanie looked between us, her mask starting to crack. "Zachary, as in Foster Investments?" "The same," he said, then turned to me. "We met at a conference in San Francisco. Lucky timing." Nathan tried to recover. "Well, we should catch up sometime. Talk strategy. Collaboration, maybe." Zachary smiled. "My calendar's pretty full these days, but you can contact my office." He turned to me. "They're ready to begin." We walked away. Behind us, I could feel them watching. I didn't need revenge, didn't need to yell or throw drinks or storm out dramatically. I had something better. Peace. Success. A love that didn't need to be displayed to be real. And the satisfaction of watching the woman who once pitied me realize she had nothing I wanted anymore. The day after the funeral, the house felt different. Quieter than grief. My father had gone to my uncle's for dinner, said he needed air. I stayed behind to help sort through drawers my mother hadn't opened in years. That's when the doorbell rang. I opened it and found Stephanie standing there, alone. No Nathan, no designer handbag, just her, in jeans and a navy coat that looked like it belonged to someone else. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't say yes, just stepped aside. In the kitchen, I poured coffee while she sat at the table like she used to, hands wrapped around the mug like they could keep her steady. "Where's Nathan?" I asked, not looking at her. "Home," she said. "He doesn't know I'm here." I nodded, waited. She didn't drink the coffee, just stared at it. "I wanted to say sorry," she said, "for what I said at the funeral about you being alone. That was cruel. I know it." I sat across from her, silent. She pulled something from her purse, my mother's journal. "I read it," she said, her voice lower now. "The dad showed it to me. The last entry." She trailed off, then swallowed. "She wanted us to find our way back to each other." I nodded once. "I read it too." Stephanie looked up. Her eyes were tired. "You want honesty?" she said. "I do." She took a breath. "Nathan isn't who he was when you knew him. Or maybe he is, and I just didn't want to see it. After we got married, he changed, got cold, controlling. Checks my bank statements, tracks my phone. If I don't answer right away, he texts 3 times. If I wear something he doesn't like, he makes a comment. Jokes, he calls them." I said nothing, just listened. "He hasn't hit me," she added quickly. "Not like that. But it's something, you know? I knew. So why stay? I asked. Shame, she said. Because I blew up my life, our family, because I thought I was choosing power. But all I got was debt. He leveraged everything. The house, the cars, the company. We're drowning, and I smile through charity events like it's fine. I looked at her, really looked. Gone was the woman in black silk with the diamond ring. What sat across from me was someone I hadn't seen in years. My sister, without the mask. She's planning to leave him. Already saw a lawyer. I needed you to know. Not because I deserve your forgiveness. I don't. But because Mom did. I stood, walked to the counter, pulled open the drawer where I'd placed the journal, brought it to her and opened to the last page. I know you've read it, but read it again. She did. Her hands shook. When she finished, she wiped her eyes and whispered, "She saw through everything, didn't she? She always did." She stood slowly, hesitated. "I'm not asking for anything." "I know," I said. She stepped toward the door, then turned back. "You seem different, lighter, stronger." "I am. I'm glad," she said. "One of us should be." I watched her walk away. It wasn't forgiveness, but maybe finally it was a beginning.
6 months after the funeral, I found out I was pregnant. I'd taken the test on a random Tuesday morning, more out of habit than hope. We'd been trying for years. Between the specialists and the blood draws and the monthly heartbreak, I'd stopped expecting good news. But that morning, there it was. 2 clear lines. Solid. Undeniable. I sat on the bathroom floor, back against the tub, hands shaking, heart racing, crying in a way I hadn't cried since Boston. Not out of pain, out of disbelief. When I told Zachary, he didn't say anything right away, just pulled me into his arms and whispered, "Finally." Then he laughed. The kind of laugh that only comes after surviving too much. We painted the nursery together. Soft green walls, wooden shelves, tiny books lined up like promises. Zachary built the crib himself. Every night before bed, he'd pass by the door, pause, and smile like he still couldn't believe it was real. I thought about my mother often, about how she would have cried holding that sonogram, how she would have sewn baby blankets and knitted tiny socks and insisted on being called something cooler than Grandma. And I thought about Stephanie. She had moved into a small apartment outside Cambridge, started working at a boutique marketing firm. Nothing glamorous, nothing headline-worthy, but honest. She called sometimes, not often. Enough. Once, she sent a card. No glitter, no fancy font, just a plain white envelope with my name on it. Inside was a note, handwritten. "For the next generation. May they never fight like we did." I pinned it to the corkboard above my desk. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. One afternoon, I sat in the nursery while Zachary installed a dimmer switch. I watched him work, sleeves rolled up, humming off-key, completely unaware that I was staring at him like a fool. He looked up, smiled. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just lucky." He crossed the room, kissed my forehead, and said, "No, just ready." That night, I lay in bed with my hand on my stomach, feeling a quiet flutter I'd never felt before. I closed my eyes and saw that version of myself from 6 years ago. The woman in the blue dress. The one who kept forgiving little things because she didn't want to believe the big thing. I wanted to tell her so much, that the pain wouldn't kill her, that the betrayal wasn't the end, that she'd love again. Softer this time, but deeper. That someday she'd hold a life in her hands that had nothing to do with the past and everything to do with the woman she fought to become. Zachary reached for my hand in the dark. "You okay?" he murmured. I nodded. "I'm home," I said. And I meant every word. Some betrayals hit so deep, they shake the very foundation of who we are. But sometimes what breaks us also rebuilds us, and that's the true heart of this story. This isn't just a tale of infidelity or sibling rivalry. It's about identity, survival, and the quiet strength of choosing yourself when everyone else has written your ending for you. Rebecca lost everything: her partner, her sister, her future. But in losing it all, she found something more powerful than revenge. She found clarity. She chose peace over chaos, dignity over drama, and built a new life that no one could steal. What's striking is that she never sought to get even. Her healing wasn't loud. It wasn't about proving anything. It was simply about becoming someone who didn't need to look back. And that kind of transformation, that's what true power looks like. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is walk away. This story reminds us that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, and that closure doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes the best closure is living a life so full, so grounded, it makes your past irrelevant. So ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? And who are you when they finally see you standing tall again? If this story hit you in the gut or the heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that walking away is not weakness, but power. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you have forgiven Stephanie? Would you have faced them or walked away for good? We read every comment, and your perspectives turn these stories into conversations. And if you haven't already, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. We've got another powerful story coming tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. It's got betrayal, redemption, and a twist that'll leave you questioning everything. Until then, thank you for being part of this growing community that values stories with soul. See you in the next one.